Have you ever seen someone scream at a florist until they cried over the wrong shade of eggshell white? My name is Sophie, and for the next 48 hours, I'm the lowly assistant wedding planner for Tiffany Sterling's multi-million-dollar nuptials. Tiffany thinks I'm a nobody, a girl who carries her steaming latte, holds her train, and takes the brunt of her Bridezilla meltdowns. What Tiffany doesn't know is that her groom, David, isn't just a successful hedge fund manager. He's my protege, and I'm not just a planner. I'm Sophie Vance, the CEO of Vance Global, the company that actually owns the private island they're getting married on, the catering firm they hired, and the very bank that issued her father's credit line. I'm here undercover to see if the woman my best employee is marrying is as toxic as the rumors say. And after she just slapped me for breathing too loudly during her dress fitting, I've seen enough. Tiffany wants a fairy tale? I'm about to give her a reality check that will leave her at the altar with nothing but the bill. Welcome to ThreadVerse. The air in L'avenir Couture smelled like lilies and desperation. It was the kind of boutique where you needed a background check just to make an appointment. I stood in the corner of the velvet-lined dressing room, holding a silver tray with a single glass of vintage champagne and a silk lint roller. It's sagging. Look at it. Tiffany shrieked, pointing at a microscopic fold in the $150,000 hand-stitched silk. Sophie, why are you just standing there like a statue? Adjust the bodice. Do I pay your agency $60,000 a month for you to watch me fail? Actually, Tiffany, I said, my voice as smooth as the silk she was wearing, the bodice is perfectly aligned. Perhaps it's the posture? Tiffany turned, her eyes flashing with a predatory light. She was beautiful in the way a shark is beautiful, sleek, cold, and designed to consume. My posture? Are you suggesting I'm the problem? You're a servant, Sophie. You're a glorified maid in a blazer. Your job is to make me look like a goddess, even if you have to sew the fabric to my skin. Now, get on your knees and pin the hem. Now, I looked at the floor. I looked at my $2,000 trousers. Then I knelt. As I pinned the hem, Tiffany accidentally kicked her heel, the sharp stiletto grazing my hand. I didn't flinch. I'd spent 10 years building a billion-dollar tech empire. A stiletto was nothing compared to a hostile board of directors. Oh, did that hurt? Tiffany smirked, taking a slow sip of her champagne. Maybe if you moved faster, you wouldn't be in the way. Tell me, Sophie, does it ever bother you? Spending your life planning other people's happiness while you go home to a studio apartment and a cat. I'm quite content with my life, Tiffany. I replied, finishing the pin and standing up. I find that the more people have, the less they actually enjoy. I'll go check on the floral delivery for the rehearsal dinner. Do that. And Sophie, if the lilies aren't the starlight variety, don't bother coming back. I'll have your boss fire you before the sun goes down. I walked out of the boutique, pulling my phone from my pocket. I had a missed call from David, the groom. David was a genius. He could read a market trend before it happened, and he had saved my company $200 million in his first year as VP. He was like a younger brother to me. But when it came to Tiffany Sterling, he was a blind man in a minefield. I met him at a quiet cafe 3 blocks from the boutique. I was still wearing my assistant badge. Sophie, thank God you're here, David said, looking exhausted. There were dark circles under his eyes that no amount of expensive concealer could hide. Is she? How is she? Is the dress okay? The dress is fine, David. Tiffany is. Tiffany. I sat down and took a sip of my black coffee. Are you sure about this? The merger with Sterling Industries is one thing, but a marriage is a different kind of contract. I love her, Sophie. I know she can be high-strung, but her family's legacy is legendary. If we combine our assets, we'll be unstoppable. Assets aren't everything, David. Toxicity can bankrupt a soul faster than a bad trade can bankrupt a firm. David sighed, looking out the window. She's just stressed. Once the wedding is over, she'll calm down. She's just a perfectionist. I looked at my hand, where the red mark from her stiletto was starting to swell. No, David, I thought. She's not a perfectionist. She's a predator, and she's using you as a ladder. I have to get back, I said, standing up. The rehearsal dinner is at the Vance estate tonight. I need to make sure the owner is ready for your arrival. David laughed. I still can't believe you managed to book the Vance estate. I've heard the CEO, Sophie Vance, is a total recluse. How did your agency pull that off? Let's just say I have a very close relationship with the boss, I said with a wink. The Vance estate was my pride and joy, a sprawling, neoclassical mansion on a cliffside overlooking the ocean. Tonight, it was being used to host Tiffany's pre-wedding inner circle dinner. I arrived early and shed the assistant's blazer for a simple staff uniform. I wanted to see how Tiffany treated the people who would be serving her food. Tiffany arrived in a gold sequin dress that cost more than the average American's annual salary. She walked into the grand dining hall and immediately began snapping her fingers. The lighting is too yellow. I look jaundiced, she screamed at the head waiter, a man who had worked for me for 15 years. And what is that smell? Is that rosemary? I specifically said no herbs that smell like a kitchen. This is a gala, not a trattoria. I'm sorry, Miss Sterling, the waiter said, bowing his head. The chef thought, I don't care what the chef thinks. I'm the one paying the bill. Where is that useless assistant, Sophie? Sophie, I stepped forward, holding a tray of hors d'oeuvres. I'm here, Tiffany. Finally, take these back. They're cold. And tell the owner of this house that I'm unimpressed. For someone so rich, her taste in lighting is trashy. In fact, tell her I'm reconsidering the booking fee. I might just deduct the lighting trauma from the final check. I looked at her, my heart hammering with a cold, precise rage. I'll be sure to pass that message along to the CEO, Tiffany. Word for word. Good. Now, get me a martini. Dry? And if there's a seed in the lemon, I'm pouring it on your shoes. As I walked toward the kitchen, I saw David watching us. He looked uncomfortable, his eyes darting between his fiancée and me. He was starting to see the cracks, but he wasn't there yet. He needed one more push. I pulled out my tablet and opened the Sterling Industries financial files I'd been auditing in secret. Interesting, I whispered. It looks like Tiffany's father isn't just broke. He's been using David's personal accounts as collateral for the wedding expenses. Tiffany isn't marrying David for love. She's marrying him for a bailout. The trap was set. Now, all I had to do was wait for the I do. The morning of the bridesmaid brunch was blindingly bright. We were on the south terrace of the Vance estate, a place designed for tranquility that was currently vibrating with the shrill laughter of 5 women who had never worked a day in their lives. I stood by the buffet line, dressed in my assistant uniform, a charcoal vest and slacks, refilling the carafe of fresh squeezed orange juice. Sophie, my glass is empty, Tiffany called out from the head of the long, marble table. She didn't look back. She just held her crystal flute over her shoulder like she was dropping trash. I walked over and poured the mimosa. As I did, one of her bridesmaids, a woman named Courtney who spent her time influencing people on how to be born rich, leaned in. Tiffany, is it true? Is the honeymoon really on a private yacht in the Maldives? I heard David's firm is having a bit of a liquidity issue. Tiffany's smile didn't falter, but her hand tightened on the stem of her glass. Don't be ridiculous, Courtney. David's firm is fine. But honestly, my father is the one handling the honeymoon. Sterling doesn't travel on a budget. Right, Sophie? The Maldives is lovely this time of year, I said neutrally. See? Even the help knows, Tiffany laughed. Then, she looked at me, her eyes narrowing. Oh, Sophie, you have a smudge of something on your cheek. Probably grease from the kitchen. It's disgusting. Go clean it. And while you're at it, take these gift bags up to the suite. They're heavy, so try not to drop them like you did my mood this morning. As I walked away, lugging 5 oversized silk bags, I passed Tiffany's father, Arthur Sterling, in the hallway. He was on his phone, his voice a panicked whisper. I don't care about the interest rates. Just transfer the funds from David's joint escrow. He won't notice until after the honeymoon. If that check to the florist bounces, we're all dead in the water. I stopped behind a marble pillar, my heart racing. It was worse than I thought. Arthur Sterling wasn't just broke. He was committing grand larceny against his own future son-in-law. This Sterling legacy was a hollow shell, and Tiffany was the bait used to hook David's millions. I pulled out my phone and sent a silent command to my security team. Intercept the escrow transfer. Freeze all accounts tied to Vance global subsidiaries immediately. The Sterling family was about to find out that when you play with the landlord's money, the landlord takes the house. I found David in the library an hour later. He was staring at a prenuptial agreement that Arthur Sterling had pushed him to sign. A document that essentially gave Tiffany half of his firm the moment they said, I do. Sophie, he said, looking up. His face was pale. I just got a notification. My personal escrow account is under a security hole. Do you know anything about this? I set down the gift bags and closed the heavy oak doors. For the first time, I dropped the assistant persona. I stood tall, my shoulders back, the CEO of Vance Global returning to the surface. David, look at me, I said, my voice commanding. I've been your mentor for 7 years. Have I ever steered you wrong? No, never. Then trust me when I tell you. Do not sign that paper. And do not walk down that aisle today. David stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. Sophie, I know you don't like Tiffany. I know she's been difficult, but she's my future. Her father said the escrow hold is just a glitch with the Vance Bank. It's not a glitch, David. It's a shield. Arthur Sterling has been siphoning your funds to pay for this wedding. The champagne you're drinking? You bought it. This estate? I'm letting you stay here for free because I care about you. But the bill Tiffany's father paid was a forged wire transfer. David shook his head, the denial thick in his eyes. No, That's impossible. The Sterlings are an institution. The Sterlings are a lie, David. And Tiffany, she's in on it. She just told her bridesmaids she's reconsidering my agency's fee because of lighting trauma. She doesn't love you. She loves the bailout you represent. David slumped back into his chair. I need proof, Sophie. I can't just walk away on my wedding day because of a feeling. You'll have your proof, I said, checking my watch. In exactly 4 hours, the Sterling credit line will be officially terminated. Watch what happens when the money stops. That's the real Tiffany Sterling. The wedding was scheduled for 5 p.m. By 2 p.m., the bridal suite was a pressure cooker. Tiffany was sitting in her chair, 3 hairstylists working on her as if they were polishing a diamond. I walked in with a tray of emergency sewing kits. Sophie, where have you been? Tiffany screamed. The florist just told me they won't set up the floral arch until the final payment is confirmed. Go find my father and tell him to handle it. This is an insult. I am a Sterling. Your father is currently unavailable, Tiffany, I said, my voice calm. And the florist is right. Business is business. Tiffany stood up, the half-finished veil trailing behind her like a wounded bird. She marched over to me and, in a fit of pure, unadulterated rage, snatched the tray from my hands and threw it across the room. The sound of metal hitting the floor was deafening. I don't care about business. I care about my wedding. You are a pathetic little girl, Sophie. You spend your life serving people like me because you're too plain and too stupid to ever be the one in the dress. Now, get on your knees, pick up those pins, and then go find that florist and tell them if they don't start working, I'll have their shop closed by morning. I looked at the pins scattered on the floor. I looked at Tiffany's face, contorted with a sense of entitlement that was almost pathological. No, I said. The room went silent. The hairstylist froze. What did you say to me? Tiffany whispered, her voice trembling with fury. I said no. I'm not picking up the pins. And I'm not talking to the florist. In fact, I stepped closer, looking her dead in the eye. I think it's time you learned that the help you've been abusing for the last 48 hours is the only reason you're not currently in a holding cell for your father's fraud. You're fired. Tiffany shrieked. Get out. I'll make sure you never work again. I'll call Sophie Vance personally and have you blacklisted. That's going to be a very short phone call, Tiffany, I said, a predatory smile touching my lips. Because you're looking at her. Tiffany froze. A laugh bubbled up in her throat, but it died halfway. You? Sophie Vance. Don't be pathetic. Sophie Vance is an old recluse who lives in a penthouse. You're a nobody. I'm the nobody who owns the bank that just declined your father's primary credit card, I said. I'm the nobody who owns this estate. And I'm the nobody who just handed David a folder containing your family's offshore tax records. The color drained from Tiffany's face. At that moment, the door to the suite opened. The head caterer walked in, looking nervous. Miss Sterling? I'm sorry, but the kitchen staff is stopping work. The payment for the caviar service just bounced, and the security team is asking everyone to vacate the premises. They said the owner has revoked the event permit. Tiffany turned to me, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and hatred. You can't do this. It's my wedding day. It was never a wedding, Tiffany. It was a heist, I replied. And I don't like being robbed. Especially by people who don't know how to say please and thank you. I walked to the window and looked down at the garden. The guests were starting to arrive, only to be met at the gate by security guards turning them away. The $2 million floral arch was half finished, wilting in the sun. David walked into the room. He wasn't wearing his tuxedo jacket. He held a thick manila envelope in his hand. He looked at Tiffany, and for the first time, there was no love in his eyes. Only a deep, cold clarity. David, darling, tell this woman she's crazy. Tiffany cried, rushing toward him. She's trying to ruin us. David stepped back, avoiding her touch. She's not ruining us, Tiffany. She's saving me. My lawyer just confirmed everything. You and your father were planning to use my firm's assets to cover your family's $15 million debt to Vance Global. It was a merger, David. We were going to be a power couple. A power couple built on my bankruptcy? David shook his head. The wedding is off, Tiffany. And the Sterling legacy? I think the DA is going to have a lot to say about that. I turned to Tiffany one last time. You wanted a fairy tale, Tiffany. But you forgot that in the real versions of those stories, the villain usually loses everything. Enjoy the walk home. I hear the starlight lilies are particularly beautiful this time of year. Too bad you won't be seeing them. The garden of the Vance estate, which was supposed to be the backdrop for the social event of the century, had turned into a chaotic theater of the absurd. From the balcony of the bridal suite, I watched the scene unfold. 500 of the city's wealthiest individuals, people who measured their worth in zip codes and stock portfolios, were being politely but firmly ushered toward the gates by my security team. I don't understand, My car is at the valet." A woman in a feathered hat shrieked, her voice carrying over the sound of the half-finished orchestral warm-up. "The valet service has been suspended due to non-payment, ma'am." My head of security, a man named Miller, replied with the practiced neutrality of a machine. "Please follow the gravel path to the shuttle buses." Shuttle buses. The very word was an insult to people like the Sterlings. I turned back to the room. Tiffany was slumped in her ornate chair, the $150,000 dress looking like a pile of expensive laundry. Her mascara was running, leaving black streaks down her face that made her look like a high-fashion ghost. "You're a monster," she whispered, looking at me with a hatred that could have melted steel. "You ruined my life because of a few pins and a martini?" "No, Tiffany," I said, walking over to the vanity and picking up the gold-plated invitation I'd carried for weeks. "I ruined your performance because you tried to build your life on the bones of my company and the heart of my friend. The pins were just the moment I decided you weren't worth the effort of pretending." David stood by the door, his eyes fixed on the floor. He looked like a man who had just survived a plane crash and was trying to remember his own name. "David, look at her," I said. He looked up. "This is the woman you were going to link your legacy to. Not the one in the magazines. This one. The one who would let her father rob you blind so she could have starlight lilies." David didn't say anything. He just took his engagement ring, a sapphire the size of a grape, out of his pocket and set it on the table. The sound of the metal hitting the wood was the final gavel of the wedding. "It's over, Tiffany," David said, his voice flat. "I'm filing for a restraining order against your father. And as for you, I hope the shuttle bus is comfortable." I met Arthur Sterling in the library. He was sitting in my father's favorite leather armchair, a glass of my $2,000 a bottle cognac in his hand. He looked like a king whose castle was being dismantled around him. "Sophie Vance," he said, not even looking up as I entered. I should have known. The humble assistant with the razor-sharp eyes. "You were always too good at your job. And you were always too bad at yours, Arthur," I replied, sitting across from him. I didn't pour a drink. I didn't need the liquid courage. Embezzlement from a joint escrow account? That's not just desperate. It's sloppy. I was saving my family's name. Arthur roared, slamming the glass down on the table. "The Sterling name has been in this city for 100 years. We built the bridges. We built the banks. And then you sold the steel to pay for your daughter's vanity." I countered. "The Sterling name is currently trending on Twitter, Arthur. But not for the bridges. For the fact that the wedding of the year was actually a $15 million fraud." Arthur paled. He reached for his phone, but I held up a hand. "Don't bother. Your service was cut 10 minutes ago, along with the electricity to your New York office. As the primary creditor for Sterling Industries, I've initiated a hostile liquidation. By Monday morning, Vance Global will own your patents, your real estate, and even the trademark to your own name." Arthur slumped back into the chair, the fire in his eyes dying out, replaced by a cold, gray ash. "What do you want, Sophie? You've won. Just let us leave." "You'll leave when the inventory is complete," I said, standing up. "Every item in this wedding, from the caviar to the shoes Tiffany is wearing, was purchased with David's stolen funds. I'm reclaiming it all. I believe in total transparency, Arthur. You're going to walk out of those gates with exactly what you brought into this world. Nothing." The next 3 hours were a surgical deconstruction of a life. I stood in the foyer as the Sterling possessions were brought down. First came the bridesmaids. I'd had my team inform them that the $5,000 thank you jewelry Tiffany had given them was actually stolen property. If they kept it, they were accessories to fraud. One by one, they dropped their diamond earrings and gold bracelets into a velvet-lined box I held. They didn't look at me. They didn't even look at Tiffany. They just wanted to leave before the press arrived at the gates. Then came Tiffany. She was still in the dress. She looked at me, her eyes red and puffy. "You can't be serious. You want me to take it off? Here, there's a changing room in the servants' quarters," I said, pointing toward the back of the house. "I've provided a set of assistant scrubs for you to wear. They're gray, cotton, and very durable, much like the ones I wore while you were kicking me in the fitting room." "I hate you," she hissed. "I know," I smiled. "It's a very common feeling among people who get caught." Tiffany walked toward the back of the house, her $150,000 train dragging across the marble floor she had mocked. 10 minutes later, she emerged. The transformation was total. Gone was this Sterling goddess. In her place stood a woman in oversized gray scrubs, her hair a mess, her feet bare because the $4,000 heels had been repossessed. She looked small. She looked common. "The shuttle is waiting, Tiffany," I said, handing her a plastic bag containing her personal cell phone, the only thing she actually owned. "Where's David?" she asked, her voice trembling. "David is in the penthouse, drafting a press release with my PR team." He's the victim of the Sterling fraud. You're just the headline. I watched from the front steps as Tiffany and her father walked down the long, gravel driveway. They didn't have a limousine. They didn't have a valet. They had a white shuttle bus with Vance Logistics written on the side. As the bus pulled away, I felt a tap on my shoulder. It was David. "Is it done?" he asked. "The Sterling family is officially liquidated," I said. "How are you holding up?" David looked out at the empty garden, at the wilting lilies and the silent orchestra. "I feel like I just woke up from a 5-year coma. I owe you everything, Sophie. Not just the money. The clarity. That's what mentors are for, David. Now let's go inside. I have a feeling the Monday morning market is going to be very interesting." The aftermath of the Sterling scandal was a whirlwind. Within 48 hours, Sterling Industries was gone. The headlines were brutal. Sterling Silver turns TO lead. Bridezilla's billion-dollar bounce. David didn't hide. Under my guidance, he became the face of corporate integrity. He returned every cent of the recovered assets to his investors and donated the repossessed wedding items to various charities. The $150,000 dress was auctioned off, the proceeds building a new wing for a women's shelter. 6 months later, I was sitting in my office at the top of Vance Tower. The view of the city was clear, the sun setting behind the skyline. David walked in, looking sharper than I'd ever seen him. He wasn't the blind romantic anymore. He was a shark, but a shark with a conscience. "The merger with the Japanese tech firm is complete, Sophie," he said, setting a folder on my desk. "And I've officially rebranded my personal fund. It's called the Vanguard. No legacies. No old money drama. Just performance. I like it," I said, leaning back. "And Tiffany?" David's expression didn't change. "She tried to sue for emotional distress last month. My lawyers had it dismissed in 5 minutes. Last I heard, she's living in a studio apartment in Jersey. She's working as, well, she's a sales assistant at a mid-range department store." I smiled. "A sales assistant? I hope she's good at adjusting hems." "She's learning," David said. "She has to. There's no one left to pay the bill." I looked out at the city I owned, at the life I'd built. I thought about the girl who had knelt on the floor of a boutique, taking a stiletto to the hand just to see the truth. "The world is full of Sterlings, David," I said, standing up and walking to the window. "They think the dress is what makes them important. They think the name is the power. But the real power is the one who knows how to fold the fabric." "To the fabric folders," David said, raising an invisible glass. "To the fabric folders," I agreed. And that, my friends, is the story of how Sophie Vance turned a Bridezilla's dream into a corporate nightmare. Tiffany thought she could treat the world like her personal runway, but she forgot that the person carrying her train might just be the one who owns the floor. Seeing her walk out of that estate in gray scrubs, that is the ultimate ThreadVerse satisfaction. Sophie didn't just save her friend David. She saved his legacy and showed the world that a Sterling name is worth nothing if the person wearing it has no soul. If you cheered when Tiffany had to hand over her earrings, do me a huge favor, smash that like button. It really helps us keep bringing you these 100% real stories of ProRevenge and corporate justice. And if you're new here, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell. We've got more secret billionaires, more entitled brides, and more absolute karma coming your way every single week. Before you go, I want to hear from you. What's the most entitled thing you've ever seen a bride do? Did she get her karma? Or is she still bridezilling her way through life? Drop a comment below. I read every single one. And remember, never look down on the help. They might just be the ones signing your paycheck. I'll see you in the next one.